So imagine you're standing on a crowded train platform. You check your watch, maybe you grab a coffee.
Just a totally normal morning commute.
Right, exactly. And for nearly 2 decades, the train has arrived at the exact second you expected it to. I mean, you don't even think about the massive invisible web of signals and software making that happen. You just trust it.
Yeah, we take it completely for granted.
We really do. But today, the board flashes a delay. And in that single moment, that invisible illusion of total control just shatters. Suddenly, you're like intensely aware of the systems that hold your life together.
It's a very uncomfortable feeling.
It is. So today on the deep dive, we are looking at exactly what happens when the massive structures we rely on, from high-speed railways to billion-dollar digital economies, when they start to buckle. How we frantically try to rewrite the rules, and honestly, why we are so deeply obsessed with physically holding on to the past.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating cross-section of human behavior we're looking at today. We are exploring a catastrophic transportation failure in Taiwan, a pretty fundamental shift in how local governments handle social welfare, and a massive legal breakthrough in the U.S. Senate for the digital economy.
Not to mention a very public breakdown of family boundaries.
Right, that too. And we'll be ending with a bizarre €500,000 auction in France for a rusty piece of iron.
Which is just wild to me. But let's start with that shattered illusion of control on the train platform. We're looking at Taiwan on May 25th.
Right.
Now, the Taiwan High-Speed Rail is globally famous for being incredibly punctual, but on this day, it suffered its absolute worst delay in the 19 years since it opened.
19 years of near perfection, yeah.
Literally. I mean, even the transport minister, Chen Shikai, he was delayed getting to the legislature that morning, and the official cause was listed as what they call the signal anomaly. But I'm looking at this and wondering, how does one single anomaly freeze an entire island's transit spine?
Well, so to understand the domino effect here, you have to look at the underlying safety protocol. It's called the electronic interlocking system.
Okay.
See, the railway isn't just one long, continuous track. It's divided into highly monitored sections or blocks. And if the digital signal in any specific block registers an anomaly...
Like what? Like a power issue?
Yeah, like a voltage drop or a sensor glitch, really anything out of the ordinary. The system doesn't pause to, call a human operator and ask for their opinion.
It just acts.
Exactly. The protection mechanism automatically drops the metaphorical guillotine. It trips a failsafe that immediately halts the trains in that area to prevent a high-speed collision.
Wow.
So it is engineered to fail safely. But the trade-off for that extreme safety is that it completely freezes a meticulously planned island-wide schedule.
Wait, let me just stop you there for a second because that sounds terrifying. Are you telling me that a single digital hiccup just paralyzes the entire system?
Pretty much, yeah.
Isn't that a massive design flaw? Like you have this elegant, hyper-efficient network, and one tiny sensor glitch acts as a single point of failure for millions of commuters.
Well, that gets to the inherent paradox of highly automated, tightly coupled systems, right? High efficiency requires high vulnerability.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So the single point of failure isn't the signal itself. The vulnerability is our complete reliance on the system's perfection. When a system is designed to operate flawlessly, it often lacks the flexibility to degrade gracefully, if that makes sense.
So it's all or nothing.
Yes.
Right.
So when the software refuses to operate outside of its perfect parameters, human management has to step in, manually override the normal rules, and find a blunt force solution to restore function.
And their blunt force solution was wild. It was basically a hard reset on a computer.
Yeah, they had to.
They completely threw out the daily rulebook, they canceled the regular assigned seat trains, and switched the entire system to unreserved, free seating for the whole day.
Just wipe the slate clean.
Right. And then, to handle the massive backlog during the evening rush hour, which is from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., they scrambled to add 8 extra commuter trains.
Which is a logistical nightmare.
I can imagine. Specifically, they added southbound trains from Nangang and northbound from Taichung just to force a capacity of 5 trains per hour.
So they basically sacrificed order for sheer volume. I mean, think about the friction of assigned seating.
Oh, people searching for specific cars, checking their tickets.
Exactly, blocking the aisles, trying to fit their luggage. By stripping away that layer of rules, they eliminated the bottleneck. It's a brute force approach. When the elegant digital system fails, human brute force is often the only way to get the passengers flowing again.
So when a train safety system trips, the solution is immediate, right? You freeze the schedule, you change the seating rules, and you just push through the backlog.
Right.
But when a society's demographic safety system starts buckling under the weight of an aging population,
Yeah.
you can't just hit pause.
No, definitely not.
You have to rewrite the financial rules while the train is still moving. And that is exactly what is happening in Taiwan right now with their national health insurance, the NHI.
Yeah, the demographic shift is the ultimate slow-motion stress test on a society's infrastructure. And we are seeing local governments stepping in to fundamentally alter the rules of the social safety net to accommodate this aging reality.
Yeah. So we have sources tracking a major new trend across 4 different counties, and they're all expanding fully paid health insurance subsidies for older residents.
This is a huge shift.
It is. Hsinchu City and Nantou County are now covering premiums for seniors 65 and older, and for indigenous people 55 and older.
Okay.
And then Taitung County has been doing this for those 70 and older since January. And Miaoli County is launching their coverage for those 80 and older starting in July.
And what is particularly clever here is how some of these local governments are actually paying for it.
Oh yeah, the funding part is fascinating.
Right. So Miaoli County is funding this expansion using 256 million NTD, and that's generated entirely from corporate stamp taxes collected from major state-owned enterprises.
Wait, like Taipower and CPC?
Exactly. Taipower and CPC. A corporate stamp tax is essentially a levy placed on legal documents, contracts, real estate transactions. So they are taking the bureaucratic friction money generated by massive corporations and transferring it directly into elder care.
That is so smart. And think about your own monthly expenses right now.
Yeah.
For the individuals receiving this, the impact is massive. Seniors are saving up to 826 NTD a month.
Which really adds up.
It does. That's nearly 10,000 NTD a year kept in their pockets. And honestly, the best part is the delivery mechanism. They don't have to fill out a single form.
That's the crucial detail.
The government just automatically deducts it.
Yeah, the automatic nature of the deduction is arguably more important than the money itself. Because in social welfare, the harder a benefit is to apply for, the fewer vulnerable people actually receive it.
Bureaucracy is a barrier.
Exactly. Bureaucracy acts as a filter that often screens out the exact people it is meant to help. You know, people who might be confused by paperwork, or they lack internet access, or just don't know the program exists. By removing the friction entirely, they ensure the safety net actually deploys.
And this is where it gets complicated. Here is the massive debate surrounding this. According to our sources, this policy does not have a wealth exclusion clause.
No means testing.
Zero means testing.
Yeah.
So a struggling senior living on a tiny pension gets the subsidy, but a wealthy senior living in a multi-million-dollar mansion also gets their premium paid for by the government.
Right.
Now, we're not taking a side here, but critics are asking, is that remotely fair to the younger working-class taxpayers who are footing the bill?
It's a very fair question. The tension here perfectly illustrates the philosophical divide in modern governance, which is universal dignity versus fiscal responsibility.
How so?
Well, critics argue that using limited public funds to subsidize wealthy individuals is a misallocation of resources. They believe welfare should be laser-targeted only to those who truly need it to survive. That protects the younger tax base from carrying an unnecessary burden.
I mean, it makes logical sense. Why should a 30-year-old making minimum wage essentially buy a coffee every month for a millionaire?
From a purely emotional standpoint, it sounds absurd. However, proponents of this non-exclusionary approach, they look at the raw math of administration.
The cost of the bureaucracy itself.
Exactly. Means testing, right. The process of auditing citizens, verifying their bank accounts, checking their property values, and constantly updating that data. It requires a massive, expensive army of bureaucrats.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Sometimes the administrative cost of proving a wealthy person doesn't qualify is actually higher than just giving them the 826 NTD benefit in the first place.
That is wild.
Furthermore, a universal system completely eliminates the stigma of welfare and guarantees that zero vulnerable people fall through the cracks due to administrative errors.
It is just a fascinating trade-off. You knowingly accept that some wealthy people will get a free ride, and in exchange, you guarantee that no vulnerable senior is left behind.
While simultaneously saving millions on government red tape.
Exactly. It just highlights how messy it is to patch up these 20th century social rules.
It really does. But, you know, while local governments are patching up the old physical and social rules, the U.S. government is facing a completely different challenge.
Oh, yeah?
They are trying to build a brand new legal structure from scratch for an entirely new kind of economy.
Yes, let's get into this. Our sources point us to a massive development in the U.S. Senate. The Clarity Act just passed the Senate Banking Committee with a 15-9 vote.
This is huge.
It's been, 13 years of total regulatory ambiguity, a period where American innovation and capital basically fled overseas. And now they are finally trying to define the rules of the digital frontier.
This vote really is a watershed moment. For over a decade, regulators have been trying to force decentralized technologies into legal frameworks written in the 1930s.
Which makes no sense.
None. The Clarity Act is the first major legislative acknowledgement of a fundamental truth of the digital age. Networks are not companies.
Yes. I've always thought of the past 13 years of crypto regulation like trying to enforce horse and buggy traffic laws on flying cars.
That's a great way to put it.
You have these ancient corporate laws being applied to invisible, decentralized blockchains, and everyone was just crashing.
It's actually even messier than the flying car analogy, though, because a flying car is still a physical vehicle you can point to, right?
True.
With decentralized finance, regulators weren't just looking at a new vehicle, they were looking at a completely invisible highway that no single person owns.
Right.
Traditionally, U.S. financial law operates on centralized control. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, they look for a CEO, they look for a board of directors, they need a central entity they can subpoena and regulate.
But a truly decentralized blockchain doesn't have a CEO to subpoena.
Exactly. So the Clarity Act legally separates the jurisdictions. It states that if a digital asset is decentralized enough, it functions more like a digital commodity, like digital gold or wheat.
So it falls under the CFTC.
Yes, the commodities regulator, not the SEC.
But reading through the bill, this isn't just a free pass for tech bros. There was a major, highly specific compromise regarding stablecoins, like USDC issued by Circle.
Oh, this part is critical.
And for context, for anyone listening, stablecoins are digital tokens designed to always equal exactly $1.
Right. And the stablecoin compromise is arguably the most critical defensive measure in the entire legislation. The act strictly forbids what it calls passive holding yield.
Meaning, if you have 1,000 digital dollars sitting in your crypto wallet, you cannot earn a 5% interest rate on it just for leaving it there, like you would in a traditional bank savings account.
Correct. And the reasoning behind this ban is entirely about preventing a systemic financial collapse.
Really? How so?
Think about the mechanics of a bank run. If stablecoins were allowed to offer passive, risk-free interest, they would essentially become unregulated bank deposits.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, consumers would instantly pull their money out of traditional regulated banks and dump it into digital wallets to get the better rate. And traditional banks rely on those deposits to issue mortgages and business loans.
So if those deposits vanish overnight...
the traditional banking system collapses.
So they had to build a firewall to protect the legacy banks. But the act does allow for something called active incentives, right?
Yes. The legislation makes a sharp distinction between hoarding and participating. While you cannot earn passive yield, the act allows for yield as a service.
So you have to actually do something.
Exactly. If you are actively using your stablecoin to provide liquidity to a market or actively participating in securing a network, you can be incentivized. It demands that if you want a reward, you have to contribute to the digital economy, not just park your money in it.
So ultimately, the Clarity Act is about establishing boundaries. It's bringing accountability to a digital space full of innovators who spent a decade saying they were, just experimenting.
Exactly.
But speaking of experimenting with dangerous things and completely ignoring societal boundaries, let's pivot to a story dominating the trending charts in Taiwan right now.
Yeah, this brings us to the very complex situation surrounding Sun An-tso.
So for anyone who hasn't seen the news, Sun An-tso is the 26-year-old son of very famous Taiwanese entertainers Sun Peng and Di Ying. And he was recently detained by police for making and testing a homemade flamethrower on the public street.
Which is not only highly illegal, but poses an extreme threat to public safety.
Yeah, you can't just test a flamethrower in public. And his attitude when confronted was what really shocked people.
It was very telling.
He arrogantly claimed, quote, "The police won't come." And after he was detained, his former manager tried to defend him to the press. And the defense was basically that Sun is just an enthusiastic inventor who got too caught up in his creations, misjudged legal boundaries, and never intended to harm anyone.
Defending a public safety threat by citing good intentions rarely works, especially in the court of public opinion.
Never works.
And the internet rarely examines these incidents in isolation. This event triggered a massive, highly critical cultural flashback.
Oh, the internet never forgets. It really doesn't. The public's focus suddenly shifted away from the 26-year-old son and squarely onto his mother, Dai Ying. It created this massive boomerang effect.
Yeah, they really dug up the archives for this one.
They did. Internet sleuths found a clip from 20 years ago on the legendary talk show Kangxi Coming. In this old episode, Di Ying was fiercely criticizing a fellow guest, Li Ming'ai, publicly shaming her for, quote, not teaching her child.
The irony is glaring. The internet weaponized her 20-year-old judgment, throwing it back at her while her own son is currently detained for building weapons.
But the most striking part of this entire saga is how Li Ming'ai responded to the viral clip. She could have easily taken a victory lap.
She had every right to be petty about it.
She did. But she showed incredible grace. She recently responded by noting that all parents, at their core, just want to raise a good person. However, she emphasized one undeniable truth. A 26-year-old adult must take full responsibility for their own actions.
And her response is profound because it shifts the accountability back to where it legally and morally belongs. But, to dig deeper into the why of this situation, we have to look at families as microsystems operating within the macro system of society.
Okay, what do you mean by that? Break that down.
Well, a parent's biological instinct is to act as a shock absorber, right? To buffer their child from consequence. But consequence is the exact mechanism by which society teaches boundaries. When a family possesses immense wealth or fame, they generate a sort of reality distortion field. This microsystem can completely override the macrosystem's rules.
So they insulate the kid too much.
Exactly. If a parent continually absorbs all the shocks and prevents the child from experiencing the legal, social, or physical friction of their actions, the child never develops boundary recognition.
They don't know where the line is.
Right. They are driving on a bumpy road, but never actually feeling the bumps. So when that child is 26 years old, testing a flamethrower and genuinely believing the police won't come, that lack of boundary recognition ceases to be a private family issue. It becomes a failure of public safety.
It's such an uncomfortable reminder that you cannot build a wall around your family to keep the real world out forever. Eventually, the macro system comes knocking to enforce its rules.
It always does.
Whether it's a high-speed rail breaking down, the economy shifting, or the police showing up. The unpredictable present is incredibly messy. And maybe that deep anxiety about our unpredictable, invisible present is exactly why society is currently so obsessed with holding on to the heavy, tangible past.
That's a great point.
Which brings us to our final stop today, Paris.
The contrast here is brilliant. We are moving from the intangible anxieties of social contracts and digital laws to a very heavy, very rusting piece of 19th century iron.
Yes. So we're looking at a recent auction in Paris, a 14-step piece of the original 1889 spiral staircase from the Eiffel Tower. It's known as Section 1, just went up for sale.
And this wasn't even part of the modern tower, right?
Hey, this chunk of metal was actually removed way back in 1983 when they were modernizing the tower's elevators. It's just been sitting around.
And what was the final price tag for this discarded infrastructure?
Okay, so the auction house estimated it would go for somewhere between 120,000 and 150,000 euros.
Okay, that's already a lot.
It hammered at 340,000, and with the auction fees, the buyer paid over 450,000 euros. 500,000 euros for a staircase that literally leads to nowhere.
The underlying psychology of this purchase is fascinating. I mean, the iron itself is practically worthless. The assigned value is 100% nostalgia.
Pure emotion.
Yes. Buyers are desperate to physically touch old Paris. The sources even highlight a previous auction where a simple hat belonging to Napoleon sold for 1.93 million euros.
Almost 2 million for a hat.
People are trying to purchase permanence.
And it's not just playing out in private, velvet-roped auction houses. This deep reverence for the past is dominating public Parisian art right now, too. Our sources mention an incredible project happening at the Pont Neuf, the oldest bridge in Paris.
What's happening at the bridge?
So a contemporary artist named JR has transformed this ancient stone bridge into a massive 120-meter-long cave.
A cave?
Yeah, he used 80 giant high-tech canvas arches, printed with hyper-realistic limestone textures to completely cover the bridge. But here is the kicker. This ultra-modern installation is actually a tribute to an older piece of art.
Oh, really?
Back in 1985, the legendary artists Christo and Jean-Claude famously wrapped the entire Pont Neuf in golden fabric.
So consider the layers of historical reverence happening there. You have contemporary high-tech art wrapping historical infrastructure explicitly designed to pay tribute to slightly older contemporary art.
Yes. It's layers on layers. And here is the contradiction that absolutely blows my mind about humanity today. Think about everything we've discussed. On one hand, we have the U.S. Senate passing the Clarity Act, dedicating immense legislative energy to building invisible, weightless, decentralized digital networks for sci-fi future.
Right.
And on the exact same day, a human being is willing to transfer €500,000 of wealth just to own 14 steps of rusted iron so they can run their hands over the 19th century.
It's wild.
We are sprinting into the invisible future while desperately clinging backward to the heavy past.
If we pull all the threads together from today's sources, it paints a very cohesive picture of the human impulse. Whether we are manually rewriting the rules to clear a backlog on a high-speed railway, or creatively transferring corporate taxes to fund healthcare for a rapidly aging demographic.
Or legally defining the boundaries of an invisible digital dollar.
Exactly. Or struggling to hold a 26-year-old accountable for ignoring the physical boundaries of society, or spending fortunes to preserve a piece of the Eiffel Tower. It is all driven by the exact same need.
The need to maintain the structures that hold our reality together.
Precisely. When the future feels increasingly invisible, complex, and totally unpredictable physical anchors to the past, like a rusted staircase or an ancient stone bridge, they offer incredible psychological comfort. They are tangible proof that human endeavors can last.
Wow, we build the invisible systems to survive tomorrow, but we buy the physical artifacts just to prove we were here yesterday.
Yeah.
That is a heavy thought to chew on.
It really forces us to reconsider what we assign value to.
Which leaves you with something highly provocative to ponder after you finish listening today. Think about that Eiffel Tower staircase. If a 14-step piece of rusted iron from 1889 is worth €500,000 today purely because of its connection to a landmark, what piece of the invisible modern infrastructure we rely on today will people be auctioning off as a nostalgic treasure 100 years from now?
It's a great question. Will some wealthy collector in the year 2126 pay millions for a physical server rack from an early AI data center? Or perhaps the exact digital signal box that glitched and delayed the Taiwan High-Speed Rail?
Or will it be an encrypted, completely weightless hard drive containing the original crypto code from the Clarity Act era? What will the future consider a priceless relic of our messy present?
That is a brilliant question to leave them with.
And before we go, here is your comment challenge for this deep dive. Considering the total chaos on the high-speed rail we discussed at the top of the show, what is the longest travel delay you have ever personally experienced, and what did you actually do to pass the time while you were waiting for the system to start moving again? Let us know in the comments.
We look forward to reading how you handled the breakdown.
Thanks for diving deep with us. See you next time.